Which one again? This?
Good morning, and we'll call to order the meeting of the Regional Transportation Commission. Ms. Quigley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members of the Commission, your first item is to conduct your first citizens' participation period.
This is the first time set aside for public comment. Those wishing to speak to a posted agenda item, now is your opportunity. Seeing and hearing no one, we'll close this portion of public comment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Next on your agenda is to approve the agenda, which is in order and ready for your approval.
Motion to approve the agenda.
Motion on the floor. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Next is your general manager's report, and we would like to share some recognitions with you. The first item is to recognize an operator from our transit fixed route contractor, Keolis. A few weeks ago, Mr. Eugene Cabodal. Do we have Gene Cabodal in here? No? Well, oh, do we? Gene, come on down. We want to tell a story about you. A few weeks ago, Mr. Capote assisted an upset customer who was lost and later revealed that he suffers from a mental health condition. Mr. Capote contacted radio dispatch for supervisor and medical assistance. Mr. Capote provided comfort to the passenger until Metro arrived to assist the passenger, who reached his destination safely. Mr. Capote's compassion and professionalism deserve our recognition. So again, let's recognize Mr. Eugene Capote.
Say thank you.
Just want to say thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
And we have one more recognition as well. We'd like to recognize a driver from our contractor MV. Do we have Mr. Dante Smith with us? Dante, come on down. Mr. Smith consistently provides outstanding customer service and shares his can-do attitude by mentoring new hires. As an extra board operator, Mr. Smith has driven 18 different routes year to date. That's a lot, considering it's just now March. As an extra board operator, Mr. Smith has driven while maintaining an impressive 99.9% on-time performance. For the last 10 years, Mr. Smith has gone the extra mile with each and every customer, so thank you for your years of service, Dante.
Thank you. First of all, I want to thank God. You know, He has instilled me with the patience to do this job, and I just thank God for that. Also, I would like to thank MV for, allowing me to continue to run the Extra Board. The Extra Board, I've been on there for like 9.5 years. Done every route in the city, and just overexcited to be running you guys' buses. And it's a fun job. Thank you a lot.
Hey, Dante.
Over the past few meetings, we've discussed the idea of expanding the current ADA paratransit service area. Deputy General Manager MJ Maynard will address what we'd like to do moving forward.
Thanks, Tina. Recently, I attended a transit CEO conference, and I had the opportunity to meet and speak with a lot of transit staff from around the U.S. And the topic of how to adequately address the expanding need to serve seniors and paratransit customers was a common theme. Given the serious nature of a possible ADA paratransit service area policy change, we're going to engage a third-party contractor to do a peer review using the National Transit Database Top 50 Agency List. And that's a list that we've used historically to compare ourselves to, just to measure our success, and we'll ask the consultant to do the same thing. The review will include understanding how other transit agencies provide paratransit services. By using a consultant, we believe, to undertake this study, they'll take really an objective, data-driven approach. We're hoping to gain additional knowledge and insight into how other transit agencies around the U.S. are handling this increased demand. We'll issue a request for proposals, an RFP, this month. They will be proposals due back in April. We'll bring to you board for your consideration and approval the consultant and the contract to proceed, and then the consultant will provide the reported findings to you in August. And our goal is that this document will be a public document that people can take with them to really understand this sort of state of the paratransit world as it relates not only here in Las Vegas, but around the United States. I'll answer any questions you may have.
Any questions? Mayor Goodman.
Doing this, obviously the demographics are very different in the Southwest. So is there a concentration as you put the RFP to really make sure that the Phoenix area, New Mexico, Southern California, that we're looking at that? Because obviously as we have the growing aging population, that is going to significantly affect us, and because of our climate. Most of the people that are enduring the horrible weather back east right now, every single newscaster is praising how wonderful the weather is here, which means it's going to affect this significantly.
And you're correct. That's it. We will absolutely do that. I spent a lot of time talking to Scott Smith, who's the CEO of Valley Metro in Phoenix, and so we will ensure that the Southwest is covered.
And is there an opportunity, if I may continue, Mr. Chairman, to know the large pool when you reduce that to 2 or 3 or 4, in case there's some input? Is there just notification to us as to who the finalists are in the RFP?
However you'd like to proceed, but when we come back to you in May, we'll have a list of, again, the consultants. We can provide you with a scope of work to see you can understand the significance of the project itself, but you'll have an opportunity to look at who we're going to focus in on, as well as the contract in May.
And then who your team is of interviewers?
Correct.
Can we know that as well?
Correct.
I mean, maybe certainly the chairman and vice chairman would know that, and certainly Commissioner would know that because she's been on the team so long. But for me personally, I'd love to know. Thank you.
Thank you. I think that'll be part of a good solution for the folks that have been coming before us, is trying to really take a look at what are others doing, how is it financed. The mayor is absolutely correct. So maybe we should also make sure that at some point we work with AARP, Nevada PEP, those individuals that work with NDALC, the Disabled Community Organization, just so we're making sure that we hear from them what their perspective is. I know the Jewish Federation does busing, or they have vehicles, right? How many other groups do we have that do support moving seniors or disabled around? other than what we do through our own transit?
Less than 10, and usually the nonprofits that we work with, we do provide either a match of 50% of cash or vehicles, but unfortunately, many of them have a waiting list.
Right.
But it's less than 10.
Okay, so maybe that's just an additional place we should be monitoring to see if there's ways to help them help us better through some kind of financial scheme or something along those lines that doesn't get out of control, but maybe just some potential grants that might be out there that we're not aware of. Because a lot of times, once they get the van, it's the insurance that goes on, the liability, all the other factors that add to that cost, and we need to be cognizant of that.
And part of that deep dive will include questions in the communities. Does the transit agency work with nonprofits? Is there match funding, things like that? It's going to be very comprehensive. We'll reach out to Nevada PEP, OV, et cetera, to find out what they want to learn, so we can
Okay.
include that in the scope of work.
Okay, thank you.
Mayor Goodman.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, I should have, but that's really important, and I think the Catholic charities, all the social services, and also our senior legal aid, which is I think, still under the direction of Sugar Vogel, what the needs are there, and I know we have the Veterans Association included in that, but as you go to the questions on the RFPs, that specifically those individual groups have input to it. I think
Will do,
that's
Mayor.
really well taken. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next on your GM report, I'd like to introduce Brian Hoft, our Traffic Management Center Director, to tell you about a regional project that provides a 5-year roadmap of how best to incorporate emerging technologies to improve the performance of our Valley's traffic management system. That includes the timing of our traffic signals.
All right, thank you, Tina. And again, I'm Brian Hoff, the director of our Regional Traffic Management Center, also known as FAST. And so what I'm going to do is outline the process that we used over the past year, summarize what the goals were coming out of that, and then talk about the year one actions that we're taking to achieve this success. And I'll summarize with what we define as success for this project. So the way the project began is that a year ago, we worked closely with your staff to first see what the state of the practice is, the best practices across the country. So we reached out to almost 30 entities across the country to see what they're doing, see what their objectives are. From that information, we convened a workshop where we were able to collaborate and compare the practices throughout the country with what our needs and our goals are, and come up with 4 key goals. And then to make sure that we move this forward, we have identified a 5-year roadmap with year-by-year tasks that need to be completed, and that's how we move forward. So I will start by briefly summarizing the goals that we have, and those involve data management, traffic signal operations and performance, data-driven planning and multimodal operations, and emerging technology. So the key with data management is the analytics, those data-driven decisions, so that we can use our resources, our staff as effectively as possible to address the issues, and then get feedback, get measures on how the system is performing, and keep rolling that forward. So that's an underlying key to this entire process. That informs us on the specific types of operations and performance and strategies that we want to implement. You don't want to implement the right strategy but at the wrong place, and so with the data we are able to do that more effectively. When we talk about the planning and the multimodal operations, that means that we're not just focusing on the vehicles that are moving up and down the streets, but we're focusing on all users, the pedestrians, the bicyclists, the transit riders, everybody who needs to also move around on the system. And then finally, we have a lot of success already with the emerging technologies, and we're going to move forward with that. So I just want to spend another quick minute talking about what we're doing this year with those particular efforts. So with data management, we are now becoming we have more and more data accessible to us. We are developing the analytics that we will use to drive those decisions. So that's the key focus with data management. What we will do then is with our various projects, such as adaptive signal timing, detection management, we will see what the needs are with our data, and then we will start to identify what types of strategies can be deployed to make improvements there, all with the goal of deploying them and then measuring their success and moving forward. We will do the similar thing with planning and multimodal operations. So for example, we're implementing more and more transit priority so that we can keep the bus system in sync with the signals. So we're getting data to inform us on how that's working. That will be a key effort in year one. The other thing that we're looking at with another project where we partner with the locals and also NDOT and the Highway Patrol is the predictive analytics. We're able to see how the data informs situations that occur on the roadways. We know what has the potential to happen, where it might happen, and then we can plan resources. We could potentially deploy troopers or resources to better mitigate those incidents. And then finally, with emerging technologies, we've put a lot of effort in the last year. We're analyzing that. One thing that we have in place is almost 100 equipped signals to do the assist with the automated and connected driving. So we're evaluating how that's working, and we're seeing where we can continue to partner with the private sector and expand that program. Finally, success. First and foremost, success means safety. Deploying strategies so that we have a safe traffic signal system for all users. Success also means that our system is efficient. What we want to do is we want to take the data, we want to turn it into analysis that creates actions, and then those actions we want to be fast, repeatable, and measurable, and benefit our entire community. So that's kind of an outline of the big picture 5-year, but also a few more details on year one. And it is a very collaborative effort. I'm very appreciative to all your staff who we are working with. And we're also looking at our 3 signals out in Boulder City and our 11 signals out in Mesquite, so everybody is being represented. And I'll take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. Comments or questions? Commissioner
Thank you.
Giuliani?
Thank you. Great presentation. This last photo, I drive that every day. It's in the city. How do you take into consideration, the city's doing this great project. I just have to remember I can't turn left any longer on Main Street and the one-ways that are going in. How do you then incorporate when jurisdictions make those kind of changes?
Right. The nice thing about the way that the data is coming in from the detectors, from mobile devices, is that we see the performance change almost in real time. And so we will put in the timing, we'll put in the ideas as the system is starting to go online, but then we can quickly monitor it and see what we need to do to make adjustments. For example, the new signal at Pinto that allows you to get onto the freeway.
Get onto the freeway.
We're watching that very closely. It's only been on for a couple of days, but we're already tinkering with that, working with the Neon staff, working with the city to not wait for a few weeks, for a few months, but to be as rapid in our addressing it as possible.
So then you could maybe say, hey, a median needs to be here, or a median needs to be taken out here, or we need to allow for a U-turn, or those types of things then?
Yeah, so we would see what the performance is, and we could have informed the engineers, the public works staff about medians, about signing, about operations, about interactions with all modes of travel.
Did the engineers actually go out and walk it, or did they only sit in their offices?
No, our engineers, all our partners are out there on the roads watching this.
Good.
We can obviously watch it from our center with all the cameras, but we are very, very much immersed into our system.
And then do you work with Keolis and V then as they come in and say, hey, this route's now a little messed up, or that isn't performing for us, so that you coordinate that way then?
I am on speed text with Francis. I'm on speed text with our transit operators, and we definitely monitor things on the strip and in other locations where it's
Okay,
needed.
and then your automated and connected driving, that's the same thing as autonomous vehicles, I'm assuming?
Correct.
Okay. And then, do you coordinate with Metro where they might need cameras for some additional safety issues for them that may not be directly related?
We have worked with Metro on a couple of projects when they deployed a lot of cameras on the strip several years ago, and then recently this past year, we were working in North Las Vegas, along Las Vegas Boulevard, and some of the projects going on up there to enhance safety with camera benefits.
Because we know which corners people tend to speed through, right? So it's not just a ticketing thing. I'm thinking also they also have hotspot areas that they are watching for. And so there might just be some better coordination or maybe some interconnectivity that could be done with them that saves them money being able to put some security cameras up in places where they deem that they need to have them.
That's part of that data-driven decision-making, so
Okay.
that the resources are used well.
And then urban light rail on Maryland Parkway, where are we at? Just making sure we don't forget about, as you look at moving forward, that we're still anticipating potentially light rail on that corridor from the airport all the way to North Las Vegas, so that we're being anticipatory of anything if we ever get funding for that part of it. So that's still on your radar, so to speak.
And our experience working with our other transit routes is setting us up so that as we move forward with whatever mode it is, that we'll be ready for it.
Because I believe the county is going to be letting their RFP for resurfacing Maryland, hopefully within the next month, I think. And so then I just want to make sure we're coordinating so we don't tear things up necessarily, but I want to look at the widened sidewalks and some things along those lines at the same time. So hopefully you'll coordinate that. Thank you. Thank you, Mr.
Mayor Goodman?
Just one question. Thank you for the report, and it's more to Ms. Quigley. This is an expanding area, obviously. How are you taking that into the budget consideration for hardware and software and then all the coordination? Because the department has to grow exponentially.
Sure. And as part of the fuel revenue indexing, FRI2, there are projects in there that are specifically related to ITS and fiber, and Brian can go into the detail on it. One of the things we're going to want to do at a federal level as well, and we have been traveling to DC, but when you go to DC is that we continue to push for a carve-out that is specifically for ITS-related projects. The FAST Act did have did consider ITS and the importance of ITS, but other projects and efforts moving forward, we want to make sure that ITS actually gets a specific carve-out if we can.
So
I
it is
agree
built
with you.
into your budget, though,
Yeah.
to,
we'll talk
to
about that.
continue to build and grow as this need becomes so much more significant.
Correct. Yes.
Okay.
You want to talk about the?
Right, and then some recent FRI projects focused specifically on ITS and technology include modernizing corridors like Charleston and Nellis. This year, we're looking at more of the Beltway, especially in the northwest corner where that's starting to become completed. And then we're kind of cherry picking key locations that need to be infilled so that we have all the communication and all the most up-to-date devices that can bring us the information we need.
And is your information being shared across the counties and the municipalities as far as 2019 for the legislature?
So you're saying, is the data that we're
Well,
collecting
I mean,
being?
an effort to get, this piece so significant to the entire state, but that we're in front of the legislature where for NDOT and everything else.
Yeah, we'll probably work closely with NDOT on that as well. Yeah, we'd like to say technology is the new asphalt. Technology is the way that we get more capacity out of our existing infrastructure without having to add additional asphalt and additional infrastructure.
Wonderful.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, well, that concludes your general manager's report. Next up, we've got Rudy Malfabon to give us the Nevada Department of Transportation Director's Report.
Thank you, Tina. It took a lot longer to get here this morning. I'm sorry. Wanted to apologize for all the progress that we're making on Project Neon, the main event, but I wanted to also thank the media for their strong coverage this week, and our team on Project Neon, the outreach team, has been doing a great job of getting the messages out. People are just learning on how to improve their commutes, because I saw the news stories on the first day of the main event, and definitely had some major impacts and delays to folks as they get better informed and really use the tools available to them is what we're pushing. Obviously, the Waze app is a great tool to use to get your specific commute looked at before you leave work or leave home. Also,
I'm just gonna like put some emphasis on that for anybody who's listening. Yes, if you can download Waze onto your smartphone and then do pre-trip planning before you leave, it will give you the best route to get from where you are to where you need to go. And sometimes it's going to take you around I-15. So
Can you provide that to us for our newsletters and
Sure.
things for our constituents, and maybe put a link?
I will. It's WAZE, and it is an app. It's a trip planning app on your phone. But yes, we can.
And we're also using a lot of social media for getting the messages out, whether it's Facebook or Twitter. You can have push messages directly to you when you sign up on the Project Neon website. This weekend, there is a major closure of 95 that will allow us to do the demolition of some bridges on I-15 that need to be reconstructed. And this will be the first of several weekend closures. They're not back-to-back, but they're spread out through between now and Thanksgiving so that we can get some bridges taken down and then reconstructed to their final configuration. But once again, I really appreciate the media coverage. I know that it's not always positive, that you get a lot of people concerned about their delays, but I think that we can all see the progress that's occurring out there with Kiewit working day and night. And every time I drive down here, I always see a new wall or new widening that was been paved. And it's unfortunate we have to kind of shift traffic around, but we do have to reduce lanes in order to build the new alignment on I-15, the new pavement. Last week I was able to visit our delegation in DC, saw Mayor March there with the contingent from Henderson, and Tina was there for a listening session with USDOT on autonomous vehicles. It's great to see Nevada folks back there visiting and letting our delegation know what we need, as well as being able to get informed about the latest. And as everyone knows, the infrastructure plan details were released, started the conversation in Congress, and they've held some hearings about that. USDOT Secretary Chow addressed us as a group of state DOTs that were there visiting our delegations. But what we're hearing is that it started the conversation, but there's going to be a lot to do to make it come to pass this congressional session, mainly because when they reach this budget deal, which still has to be passed eventually for the rest of this fiscal year and next fiscal year, 19, they agreed to do some additional spending for defense and also for a small amount for infrastructure, possibly the hurricane relief and emergency relief with some of the disasters we've had in our nation. So that makes it harder with that increased spending to find the money to pay for the infrastructure plan that the administration wants to get passed through Congress. We heard from the House Transportation and Infrastructure Committee Chairman Schuster that it might be something that has to happen during the lame duck portion after the election, the midterm elections this year. And that's another thing that takes up our the time needed to deliberate infrastructure is this midterm elections this year. A lot of members are going to be going back home and visiting and trying to run for re-election. So it takes time away from the deliberations that need to be had in Congress, unfortunately. In the Senate side, they need 60 votes to pass something that's going to fund. And you've probably heard about the resistance to raising the gas tax, although the president made some comments that were supportive of that in order to find a way to fund it. Probably won't happen, though. Anyways, another thing that we did while we were back there is to talk with FCC commissioners about protecting what we call the safety spectrum, 5.9 gigahertz. So as we deploy, and City of Las Vegas has done some things with putting in some of these communication devices downtown. Other communities like Henderson are doing some things with really applying some of this technology. As Tina said, technology is the new asphalt, and it's really about protecting this safety spectrum that communicates between vehicles, smart vehicles, and infrastructure so that we can operate our systems better. But we are just deploying this. Many state DOTs and local agencies are just deploying and using this safety spectrum that's been around for years. The way that the federal government sees it, FCC might sell this off as an asset, saying that, well, the public sector and the private sector can coexist and use this safety spectrum. We'll give priority to the public sector for public safety when it's necessary. But we're concerned with that because when they sell it off to a broadband company that streams video, and the consumer starts complaining, hey, I'm getting bad service here, we know what happens is there's a lot more pressure to address the commercial aspects of that spectrum usage by the broadband companies. So we at least had our say with them, but we're just feeling that they might still sell off that safety spectrum, 5.9 gigahertz, but we did at least communicate our concerns to our delegation as well about that. I met with the current Caltrans director. We talked a little bit about I-15, but he did mention that he's resigning, or he resigned effective this week. Governor Brown did appoint a new director. She was sworn in. She's from San Diego district, so she should be familiar with that segment of I-15, and we'll continue that discussion with the new Caltrans director. Mayor Goodman, do you have a comment?
If I might, Mr. Chairman, back in Washington and meeting with the Department of Transportation representatives, which the President had called together 7 mayors. As you know, we put forth this entire project of certainly widening that beltway from State Line to Barstow. Because what happens, and I asked the report yesterday in front of City Council, make sure you let California know that the spaghetti bowl's another log jam, because it will help us get the widening of State Line to Barstow from a federal perspective, because it's freight that the entire country is interested in. And I-15 connects in the north to the I-70, in the middle part of the country to the I-40, and to the southern part of the country on the I-10. So hopefully whatever you can do, I know you've been working with them, and certainly everything we're trying to get done in Washington and through Congresswoman Titus as well, obviously, those two pieces. And now with this new main event going on, there's a squeeze down there and there's a squeeze for us, and I thought that might help to make sure DC knows, and that in addition to our people, that we get right through to Secretary Chow on this.
Thank you, Mayor. That's a good point, and we do communicate with our coalition for I-15 between the 4 states, California, Nevada, Arizona, and Utah, as well as an operations management grant from the feds that allows us to kind of broaden that kind of communication between the operation centers, traffic operation centers in those states.
Well, the president does have in his hands, I put it right there, it was in the paper, that plan that wonderfully Jorge Cervantes from the city had worked on and is continuing to work on. Because I believe about 35% or 30 to 35% of our tourism, not that the rest of the country cares, but comes from the Southern California area. So it's critical if we can get that done. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Little update on Tiger grants. Some of the awards notifications are trickling out. We recently heard that Carson City won a $7.5 million award for their Carson Street Complete Streets project. So I haven't seen a full list from USDOT of the Tiger grant awards, but we had heard when we were in DC that the infra grants, which are mainly looking at the mainline freeways and freight movement, that they're coming next, but they did say that they were going to start looking at the infra grant applications as well. NDOT did not submit a Tiger grant, but we didn't feel that we had something that fit the criteria so well that was actually ready to go, but we did submit some infra applications. We'll hear about that probably in the coming months, because they said that they have to look at, we're getting Tiger out first, and then they're going to concentrate on infra.
Real quick, Rudy, what were the infra grant projects that we put in?
I think it was I-15, down here was I-15 North. So kind of looking at beyond the speedway, the interchange with the Beltway in the northern part of the valley.
And another question too, Rudy, does NDOT prioritize what they want to see come back to the state? So do they tell the federal government, Department of Transportation, that, say, Carson City's project should be the #1 consideration?
Yeah, we usually give letters of support. We do not prioritize, just so that we don't kind of discount one applicant over another. We try to make it a fair process, but we do offer to write letters of support for other entities. Regarding Interstate 11, we're getting ready to wrap up our phase in a few weeks and open up the interchange to US 95, the road to Searchlight. Obviously, the lion's share of I-11 being constructed by RTC will open up later this year, and we'll have a grand celebration, right? Looking forward to that. But the environmental study of the I-11 alternatives in Las Vegas itself, in the urban area, will contract out an environmental consultant later this year. But what we're looking at is the rest of north of Las Vegas, really past Mercury, where it gets down to 2 lanes again on US 95. We're going to do a process called planning and environmental linkage, which it's not a true environmental clearance yet, but it's discussion with the public and stakeholders about what alignments really make sense, looking at certain criteria like economic impact, connections to other modes of transportation, freight movement. All these factors will be identified in public information meetings, and the first one is going to kick off here for this portion from southern Nevada all the way up to I-80 for the I-11 corridor. First one will kick off on March 20th at the Santa Fe Station Casino. We'll have a room there for our public information meeting. Then we're going to go up the line into some of the rural communities, Tonopah, Hawthorne, Fallon, and also in Reno and Carson City. So have a series of meetings, inform the public about what we're looking at for the criteria, and try to, really the goal is to throw out some of the alignments for I-11 alternatives that don't really make sense. They don't really go anywhere that people would want to go, or they don't meet certain criteria that we were establishing with public input. So a lot more to come before we actually get to an environmental study of the portion from Mercury interchange, say all the way to I-80. But at least this will help us to streamline the environmental study effort and have a reduced set of alternatives to look at for I-11 for the rest of the way up to Interstate 80 in northern Nevada. A lot of interest in some of those rural communities, so that's why we're going to be having several of these meetings and listen to what the public has to say about those alternatives. With that, I'm able to answer some questions from the members.
Thank you, Rudy. Commissioner?
Thank you. Rudy, along those lines, I remember Senator Neal had a interim study, something to look at rail or transit across the state. Does that ring a bell?
Yes, that was several years ago. We do have the study from the legislature about, they looked at alternatives for light rail up to the rural communities. It looked at some along I-15 and up towards, at that time Coyote Springs was something on the radar, and I think that we have a copy of that. We can look into that and feed that into the I-11 discussion.
How does that interface at all with what you were just talking about on your alternative?
Most likely, we're going to be looking at the surface transportation corridors that are more highway related, although that we can look at. We do have a freight plan and a rail plan that we can integrate into that. We wouldn't, because of the restrictions on the use of fuel tax revenues, it wouldn't go to construction of a light rail system, but it's something that we can at least integrate and incorporate into our planning efforts.
That'd be interesting, especially I know Governor had looked at logistic ports around the state as well, and there might be just some interconnectivity while we're looking at that. And then as you're doing your programs, are you integrating the technology that everybody was talking about for either autonomous or just internet access, because that's still a dearth out there that allows for things to be able to communicate?
Definitely. That's we follow the federal dig once policy for fiber and utilities within our right of way. It's something to look at, and also our freight plan had some of those aspects of use of technology and automated trucks. For instance, the one that Freightliner did from the Hoover Dam, driving it driverless to the Speedway interchange. So,
Mr. Chair.
Mayor?
Mr. Chairman, if I might, just wanted to express Boulder City's thanks to Rudy and to NDOT for the great work that you've done on I-11. It's been phenomenal. Your portions at the Railroad Pass area, a lot of traffic going through there still every day, and we're already seeing the relief from the bottleneck there because of the portions that are opened up. It's been done safely throughout. It's been a great project, and we appreciate your coordination with our team there in Boulder City, as well as thanking RTC for its portion. It's not coming online for probably till September or October, but that's going to be majestic when it's done. I've been on tours out there, and it's really a great project. If you haven't been out that way, you should go check out what's opened already. I know the users are very happy to have that access, and we're seeing improvements at Railroad Pass Casino as well in coordination with that, and it's all come off really without a hitch, so we appreciate that.
thank you, Mayor.
Mayor Pro Tem?
Hi, Rudy. Yesterday at our council meeting, Councilman Stravis Anthony mentioned those HOV lanes that are on the freeway. I know a lot of people don't like them because I've read letters to the editor. I don't go out to the Northwest very often, so I don't know it personally. But evidently, particularly during this time with the neon congestion, 3 lanes are very, very crowded. He says you can hardly move The other lane, which is supposed to be to alleviate traffic, has just very, very few people. So the suggestion came up, would it be possible for, at least during this time when things are so bogged up, to let those HOV lanes be used by people that ordinarily wouldn't be able to use them? Because evidently it's a big problem in the Northwest. That's what I was told.
Great question. So we are going to look into that with the Federal Highway Administration, since we use federal funds to pay for it as a certain purpose for carpool lanes, to see if we can look at that. One of the concerns that we have is that really the issue with the main event currently with Project Neon is the amount of ramps and access between US 95 and I-15 are very limited. The number of lanes on I-15 to receive that traffic are very limited. So we probably would get some benefit, but it would basically amount to more storage on US 95, because you have to kind of slow down once you get to the Spaghetti Bowl interchange. So we might not gain as much, but we could look at that, and we're going to ask the Federal Highway Administration for some input about their opinions on
And
that
maybe if you
concept.
could call Councilman Anthony, just to let him know that you're looking at it, what you do. He said it's driving him crazy, and we have enough craziness, particularly at meetings. So if you could do that for him. And also, our director of NDOT is here today, and I've praised all the work they've done, but I want you to know he did put on the record yesterday that yesterday was the worst it would ever be. So I'm telling everybody, if you could make it through the worst it could ever be, we're going to be okay the rest of the way.
Well, let us go through this weekend when they close 95 too. And then this might be the worst week ever. But thank you.
Thank you.
Rudy, thank you. And I'd like to echo the earlier comments about Project Neon. I do drive it every day, and I think it's just been remarkable what Kiewit has done, and Highway Patrol and NDOT. It is chaos, and all the different phases are, but those that use it every day, I think, have gained an appreciation of the magnitude of the project. So now that Mayor Pro Tem has indicated last weekend was the worst ever, on the record, we're good with we're good with that. Also, kudos to NDOT and the PR team. I think they've done a phenomenal job as far as communicating on the front end, and it's working. Literally, just over the last week, the 95, and selfishly, I get off at either Rancho or MLK, but people are taking surface streets a lot sooner, which is great because it clears up my path to work, and that's great. But the PR team has done a great job. And I think it goes to my point today is it's building the credibility that you have sat here for years listening to the question of credibility of the RTC, the county, the cities, NDOT as far as transportation. And it's been very successful in building that credibility. We're at a point now where there's so much going on. I would ask you and Tina and the respective member agencies, I think it's time for a checkup on FRI, and especially FRI 1, the report card FRI 2. There's so much going on from onboard and the Transportation Resource Advisory Committee, Maryland Parkway, the Resort Corridor Study. All these things are happening, and what I don't want to lose is the momentum of that credibility. So I think if we, even as a posted agenda item, we can talk about it from a staff perspective, just a public report card on where we are. Because what I don't want to happen is we're busy with all these other major projects, but we lose that commitment to the public we made a few years ago as far as, if you support this, we will do the following. And I think it's time that we take a look at the following to make sure that the things we said publicly at this board and our respective boards, we're meeting that commitment in anticipation of a potential initiative in 20 or anything else we're doing. So if we could work with Rudy and NDOT, get a credibility a checkup on some of these things, and full transparency, one of the things I heard, and it's not been verified, is selfishly the Centennial Bowl in the Northwest. That was one of the specific projects we called out. And FRI 2, if passed, was going to consolidate the Centennial Bowl from 2029 to 2020, 2021. And we're starting to get inquiries on that. So, and that's just one. I'm sure we all in our member agencies have specific projects that we communicated to our citizens. So let's have a very transparent, positive checkup on where we are.
We definitely will coordinate with Tina on that, Chairman. We did commit our initial first year of funding of FRI2 to the phase of Centennial Bowl that this board kind of accelerated by adopting it into the regional tip recently. So we anticipate going out for bids for the next phase in the next few months, and then on the heels of that, in a couple of years, we would have the final phase, which not only finishes the system-to-system interchange ramps, but also restores a lot of that local connectivity with the partnerships with the city and the county on that design of that interchange. So good news that we'll share as part of that credibility check with RTC in the coming months.
And thank you. And then another specific request, and I had a brief conversation with one of your senior staff members regarding the Raiders Stadium. The final transportation, parking, pedestrian is not due to the county until September, but everyone is in agreement that there'd be some type of pedestrian overpass of the I-15. Location, we don't know yet, but the question was raised, instead of waiting for a specific pedestrian bridge location, is NDOT allowed to initiate a pedestrian bridge corridor? So if it's not at point X, it may be from point A to Z, and study that from an EIS standpoint or whatever the federal requirement, to at least initiate an approval process that would take in the pedestrian corridor that would enable us to identify a site specific later.
I'd have to look into that, Chairman. I know that we're developing our Tropicana, Hacienda, Harbin kind of package for environmental clearance, and one of the possible locations could be near Hacienda. Obviously, we want to make sure that we coordinate that with the stadium developer and Clark County. NDOT doesn't force the developer to build up the pedestrian bridge because that's more the local jurisdiction, but we definitely want to play a role in coordination for that, and I think that's a great idea to look at what are the alternatives for pedestrian traffic to the stadium throughout that segment of I-15.
If it's possible, that way, if a final site is designated in September or a year from now, whenever, we have already initiated that EIS process, so we don't lose a year on that, what is a very lengthy process to begin with. Great.
And that would be, crossing I-15 will be a lot simpler to get the approvals from the feds than something that's really affecting I-15 itself. We know that we have to do our work for the HOV ramps at Hacienda and Harmon and Tropicana, but I think that it'd be simple to get a bridge over I-15 that's a pedestrian bridge.
Great news. Any other comments or questions? Mayor Pro Tem?
Is this the county or the state or NDOT? I'm just wondering.
The SB1 calls out specifically that infrastructure that is created because of the impact of the stadium is paid by the stadium
So the
authority.
stadium people, the pro teams would need to pay for it. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Rudy. But we have a but.
The pedestrian bridge is because that's their excuse for being able to move people back and forth. They still have an ingress and egress issue, and there's still issues as far as how you do a flyover and all that, and that may still be falling onto the state and or the local governments. But Commissioner's correct about the pedestrian part of it. I still believe that they need to do a survey of their own ticket holders to see if they'd even walk that far to come from wherever they think they might be coming from. But I think that's got to be some issues that are still out there to be looked at.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rudy.
All right. That brings us to your consent agenda, which is made up of items 5 through 35 and may be taken with one motion.
Motion on the floor. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion
Item
carries.
number 36 is to receive a report on Southern Nevada Strong and the progress of implementation by the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. My name is Raymond Hess, Director of Planning Services at the RTC, and I'm here before you today to give you your quarterly update on Southern Nevada Strong. And we're very pleased to have Captain Rich Fletcher from Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department here to talk about some of the initiatives that Metro do to align with Southern Nevada Strong. But before I turn the mic over to him, I'd like to spend just a few moments going over some of the things we've been up to over the last quarter. I'm going to bypass the part about the summit because you saw a video on that at a previous meeting during the general manager's report, so I think you're up to speed on it, but it's a very proud accomplishment from the last quarter that I just wanted to kind of reiterate with you all. So one of the things that is included in your backup, I believe it's agenda item number 20, is our accomplishments report for calendar year 2017. These are all the things that the Southern Nevada Strong team has worked on, the Office of Implementation. So this doesn't include the hundreds of wonderful things that you all are doing, as well as many of the other partners in the community related to Southern Nevada Strong. This is just the things that the RTC is doing as an agency to advance Southern Nevada Strong. And so we want to make sure we're always accountable to you and transparent on the things that we do. And this report highlights some of the things that we've worked on in the past year. Specifically, it identifies how we've coordinated and convened key stakeholders, how it has supported and informed key initiatives, how we've researched and reported key topics, and how we've expanded upon organizational capacity and community engagement. Next, I'd like to draw your attention to a workshop that we're having on March 26th at 2:30 p.m. You may recall last year that we finalized a competitive grant strategy for federal funds, and we're getting the band back together. We're pulling together the Gwynn Center, the State Grant Office, United Way, and the Nevada Community Foundation, and many other partners to come together to make sure that we're advancing the work that's identified in that plan. Specifically, we're going to have a panel of partners in our valley and how we can collaborate to increase federal funding for our community. Something that I'm very excited to report on, and I believe the save the date will go out later today, so this should show up in your mailbox. On April 25th, we are having a transit-oriented development symposium at the Thomas and Mack Center. So the keynote will be former U.S. Secretary of Transportation Anthony Fox. This is a huge get for us. We're really excited about it. He's going to talk to us about how transportation can really transform a community and how, if we do our planning correctly related to the land use that accompanies it, we can really transform our community. So with that, what I'd like to do is introduce Captain Fletcher, who will go over some of the initiatives that Metro is up to.
Thank you, Raymond. Captain, welcome.
Good morning.
It's an honor to have you here. We miss you in the Northwest.
Very kind, and it's an honor to be here, and thank you for your time. So I'm Captain Rich Fletcher. I oversee Support Operations Bureau. Inside that bureau is community engagement, and it's a pretty neat detail to be part of and oversee, and I'll explain why. But what we're doing now does align with the Southern Nevada Strong, and I want to show you some of that. So the sheriff was pretty adamant in his State of the Department address a couple weeks ago about reducing violent crime. This was also the goal last year, but this year he put an emphasis on the patrol bureau captains. Not only reduce crime, but work those areas that have been a blight for decades, the traditional hotspots, if you will. And he also wanted to see the community engagement increase in each area command. Oh, let me go back. So if you look on your slide there, the goals of SNS and the goals of Office of Community Engagement pretty much line up. It's all about increasing public awareness, and I'd love to see a full room here because I know there's different entities in here that we would like to see get involved with our police department and our social services. My job is to make sure that we're providing education and training to different entities and to the public. We conduct outreach in all forms, whether it's charity, business, faith-based, it doesn't matter, we'll take you on, as long as you're a legal business or enterprise. And then really create that proactive, positive engagement. This city and this police department and this county has a great reputation. My job is to make sure that gets even higher up the chain, and I think we're doing a pretty good job so far. This is a very busy slide, but this is what we do. The awareness, the education, the outreach. But you'll notice on the engagement circle, that's where most of your bullet points are. This is what we do. We reach out to everybody that wants to have a safe, viable community. We believe in my office and this department that if we keep pushing and we keep pushing for people to take care of their neighborhoods, their business complexes, their apartment complexes, we'll see even a safer neighborhood. So we're reaching out to interfaith, the government, the business, any organization out there, any special interest group that wants to collaborate with Metropolitan Police Department. This is how busy we are considering I only have a staff of about 15, but we're making it work. Some of the OCE teams, we're doing the community outreach education, the graffiti teams, police athletic league. That's a great topic right there because we just did a bunch of track and field training and contests and ceremonies. We're reaching out to businesses and private entities and came up with a great 3-on-3 basketball tournament that's in its 5th year. And now LAPD called me and they go, what are you doing and how can we get involved? So we're going to see that continually grow. The recap, the Rebuilding Every City Around Peace. This is basically, for you in the audience who don't know, and forgive me, I told them I'd give them 8 minutes, but it might be 9. This is where we have an event, a tragic event like a homicide. And we know that we're going to solve that homicide, but what do we do with the people in that neighborhood? How do we prevent that retaliation? We bring in entities, faith-based groups, business partners, charities, and we show a little love to that neighborhood. And I'll tell you from firsthand experience, we solve crimes that way. We solve homicides, so it does work. You can see that my office also does the Hispanic outreach. We do the Fusion Liaison officers, which I'll talk about in a minute. We help with John Ponder on the Hope for Prisoners and the homeless outreach. So basically, my office supplies resources to every patrol bureau in the department. We'll even help the gangs, the SWAT, the Viper, whatever they need, that's what we're going to do. Digging down a little deeper, you'll see the gang violence prevention. We're part of that. The graffiti enforcement outreach. The Fusion Liaison. You know, this community has a lot of refugees. And these officers and that sergeant are mandated to go out there and make those connections, make those relationships. We also reach out to the schools when they have problems, the interfaith outreach as well. Again, we also are involved in human trafficking to prevent it. We are all over the place, and we rightfully should be, because there's more problems out there than just somebody stealing a pack of cigarettes from a 7-Eleven. There's deeper problems out there. Again, this is some of the things that we do. We're really into technology, which Sheriff Lombardo was adamant about. And you know, you can read these for yourself, but I'll say this from the heart. And I said this the other Saturday at a meeting with a bunch of faith-based members. What happens to this community if we stop? If we stop caring, if we stop trying? I tell my guys, fail 99 times, because the 100th time we're going to win. So this is what we do. And I just wish the public knew more about what Metro's doing in the community. But it doesn't make the news, but that's okay, because we still live here and we're going to push forward. But for anybody who's listening to this, if you truly want to get involved with your police department and get connected with other entities, come see me out in the hallway. I'll be outside. Thank you for your time. Is there any questions?
Yes,
Mayor.
thank you. I'd like to commend Metro and Captain Fletcher for their leadership in participating with Southern Nevada Strong, and I think it's had a huge impact, and I think it will continue to have a huge impact. And I think most folks here don't realize that you're about to retire, so we're going to be losing Captain Fletcher. So I certainly hope that you're identifying someone that will follow on and be able to carry the mantle, because the things that have been accomplished have been remarkable, and the partnership is amazing for the cities and the county, that we're all working together in the RTC to, as well as all the partner agencies like the university and the health district and the many partners that belong to Southern Nevada Strong. I think it's a great tool, and I think having a partner like Metro is huge. So I want to commend you for your work. I want to thank you for your contribution, and wish you all the best in your retirement. So
Thank
in
you,
fact-
Mayor, thank you.
Like, you're
Very,
retiring
very
in
kind
another
words.
month?
What's that?
In another month, or when are you
27 days.
27? Yeah.
But listen, the guy who's replacing me, he will be briefed up and mentored on everything we're doing. And, you know, and I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about your police department, your community helping us out as well. It's just, you can't stop. Because the minute you stop, that's when we get in trouble. So that's why we're pushing forward. So, thank you.
Captain, and Tina, have we ever taken advantage with our operators from a safety perspective, set up some kind of group with the drivers and the management? So if we could,
Yeah, and actually.
time permitting, don't leave that corridor until some of our partners here in the room today get contact information.
Yeah, I want to talk to that guy when he's doing 99.9% on time. That's pretty impressive.
Yeah, but you understand that Dante has a special prayer line for patience, which we talked about. We could, but Captain,
Thank you. Yes, Chairman. Thank you.
I would echo the comments of the mayor that you know, I was fortunate enough to work with you very closely in the Northwest, and not only your leadership but just your approach, because it is all about the interaction and the people, and having the citizens just feel what we do about Metro, that you know, they're men and women, they're just like us, and what we ask you to do each and every day, Metro and certainly all our law enforcement, it's remarkable. I have said in the past, and I'll continue to say, that we, from a law enforcement standpoint, we're very blessed in this community. We have the greatest in this country, and it's individuals like you that represent the sheriff and Metro and law enforcement that we greatly appreciate your service.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate it. Thank you, Board.
Mr. Chairman,
Mayor Pro Tem.
I wanted to say we really appreciate you also, but you've done such a great job whenever we've had neighborhood meetings, and I'm not talking about HOAs, I'm talking about what you guys talk about, you know, getting together as a neighborhood, working with Metro. Anytime we have a meeting, anytime we have anything, you come and you tell us and educate us and help us. Two areas that we have had some difficulty with. Number one, every time we get everything going smoothly, the person we're involved with gets transferred. So then we got to begin all over again. But secondly, it's when there's a problem and they call 911 or someplace, and I'm assuming it's because we just don't have enough personnel, but they'll tell me they'll wait 2 or 3 hours before someone comes and everything, because we keep telling them, call Metro, let Metro know, let them have it on their record. And so that's a difficulty there.
So the first issue I have no control over. Where Sheriff
I
Lombardo
know.
tells us to go, that's where we go.
I know.
And we say, thank you, sir. The
Yes.
second issue, Metro actually is in the top 1% of 911 response. The problem is some of that data, when your constituents call you, could be on a Friday night, and we're just busy.
That's what
But
I figured.
But both the city and the county have done a tremendous job in helping us finance that 600 and some officers coming through, and we're actually almost done graduating all of them. We have a couple more academies, so that response time will decrease. But for right now, we answer 911 calls in a matter of seconds, and the 311 call went from maybe an hour down to minutes for the non-emergency number. But the response time where the officer actually knock on your door, could we do better? Sure. We could also use more officers, as always.
Yeah. And do your community police sometimes go cruise through the neighborhoods if it's a neighborhood that has been having a lot of difficulty? You know, we've had some houses where they've kicked in the doors and robbed and things
So
like
the
that.
sheriff is pretty adamant, very adamant about this. The persistent hotspots, those blighted neighborhoods that we hear about all the time that throughout our whole careers, we will be focused on that. Those patrol captains will focus their resources in those hotspots. And I'll get to your answer here in a minute. So this is why I ask, if you want to be part of this coalition that falls in with Southern Nevada Strong, join us. Because we will go in there and we will just keep throwing resources. because it's not an enforcement problem, it's a social issue. And that's why we have to bring everyone together. As far as like when a problem neighborhood pops up, like we have a string of people kicking in doors. From my experience in Northwest, I can tell you that's probably related to a squatter problem.
Squatter.
Meaning every time somebody squats in a neighborhood, that crime, we've documented, crime goes up in a general vicinity, so we have to go find them. And listen, sometimes a bad person moves into a neighborhood and they cause problems. You know, constitutionally, we just can't kick them out. So there are issues, but I hope that every patrol captain, and I can say this because I was one just a couple months ago, that when you call or neighbors call, they are responding to that and they are looking at their data. And when I mentioned that my office now supplies every patrol bureau with resources, that includes a brand new mobile command vehicle that we retrofitted from the jail through donations. No taxpayer money spent on that one. That command vehicle is going to be heading out to those neighborhoods, and we're hoping to get all 4 major sports teams on board with us so that when that vehicle shows up, kids know that's the ice cream truck. That's the one with all the swag and the coloring books and the goods. It just goes along building that community spirit. So if you have a problem neighborhood that your people are talking about, give me a call or we'll talk and I'll address it with that bureau captain.
I just want to tell you, I know you've done very, very good work, and we're very proud of you, really proud of our Metro Police, and we're going to miss you. Thank you.
Thank you. I
We are.
appreciate the kind words. Thank you.
Yeah, that was for possible action, just receive and report. Next item is item number 37, which is to evaluate the performance of the general manager, and I'll turn it over to Senior Director Tamara Williams.
Okay, good morning, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. Item number 37 is to evaluate the performance of the general manager for the period of January 1, 2017 through December 31st, 2017, and formulate recommendations on management goals and objectives for 2018, as well as adjust compensation or take action as deemed appropriate. On December 14, 2017, the RTC board appointed RTC Chairman Larry Brown, Vice Chairman Deborah March, Councilwoman Lois Takanian, and Commissioner Chris Giuliani to serve on the evaluation committee to review the performance of the general manager. On January 30th, 2018, the appointed evaluation committee met to evaluate the 2017 performance of the general manager and provided guidance for the next evaluation period. Committee recommendations may be presented today at today's board meeting. Mr. Chairman, this item is turned over to the board for action.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. We met as a committee on January 30th and determined that the general manager was doing an outstanding job and has taken on a lot of responsibilities and charges and is juggling a lot of balls in the air. And we appreciate what you're doing, not only with transit, but with FAST and with TIBP and TRAC and Southern Nevada Strong and so many new initiatives that the RTC has taken on in recent years, as well as autonomous vehicles and so much more. And so we felt that in light of the responsibilities that you have, that you warranted a 7.5% merit increase retroactive to January 1st, 2018, a 2.5% cost of living adjustment effective July 2018, and which is a 10% salary increase overall. And this would run for the remainder of your contract, which runs through 2019. So then after that, there would need to be a new contract negotiated. And so that would be my motion to move forward with that recommendation.
Thank you. Motion on the floor. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you, Mr.
Commissioner?
Thank you.
Mr. Oh, go ahead.
You know, the other day or a couple weeks ago, a new law passed last session that allowed the Secretary of State's office to start looking at gender equity, gender pay. And so I know that Rebecca Gill from UNLV is writing up the programming for that. Caesars is going to be initiating it, and the county commission has agreed that we would start on our side. So maybe we should also begin to do that in some of our other regional entities and our other local governments, so that we're at least looking at that, being cognizant of it. So I just throw that out.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Noted. Appreciate it. Well, as usual, I'd like to just have to comment that I absolutely love being general manager of the Regional Transportation Commission. I am so proud to work with the people that I work with. They are amazing, and you're right, we multitask. We have a lot of balls in the air, but it's not me who's the sole juggler. We have a whole team of people, and absolutely love it. So thank you for getting to continue to work here. Appreciate it. And for this board, for your stability, much appreciated. Well, your next item is item number 38, which we do not have to hear. We do not have any legal counsel or legal discussions, so we can move on to your final citizens participation period.
Mr. Figgins, thank you for sitting in as our legal counsel today. You did a great job. You kept us all out of trouble. This is the second time set aside for public comment. Those wishing to speak to the board, now is your opportunity. And our first speaker is Michael Aki. And I apologize for the enunciation.
That's okay, I'm used to it. It's Michael Ake. Chairman, board members, I am the Senior Vice President of Operations for Keolis Transit America. We operate Lot B of your fixed route service. And I'm here today to convey a message from Steve Shaw, our President and CEO, who unfortunately was called away at the last minute. On behalf of Keolis Transit America, our local Las Vegas team, Keolis Worldwide, I wish to express our great pleasure in being your trusted partner since 2013. As we move into the next 5 years of our contract with RTC of Southern Nevada, the partnership we have with the RTC, most notably Tina Quigley, MJ, and Cindy Wallace, is one that our company cherishes greatly. We understand and respect the challenges you all face, and we do our best to provide outstanding service and to bring creativity to the process. Thank you for giving us the chance 5 years ago to prove that Keolis was the right choice to provide the visitors and citizens of Las Vegas with the outstanding service they deserve. Thank you for the opportunity to do so for the next 5 years as well. We are humbled by your continued vote of confidence in our company's capabilities. It means a great deal to us, and we're also very excited with what lies ahead and what we can continue to bring to you in expertise, partnership, innovation throughout the next 5 years and beyond. And on a personal note, I was very excited about negotiating this extension with your team, particularly MJ and a few of her team members are extremely good negotiators. This is the first time in 25 years of me being in the transit industry where I actually negotiated a rate reduction over the term of an existing contract. So thank you very much, and again, thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, Michael. And certainly to Keolis and our other partners. Michael, you didn't have the good fortune of sitting through these meetings over the last 3 or 4 years, but what your company and again our other partners have done, not only from the relationship with RTC, but as importantly to the drivers and the team members, has just been remarkable. So we thank you for those kind words, but likewise it's back at the partners out in the audience today.
Thank you.
Barbara McDougall. We will bring a mic up to you. Stay right there.
Thank you for this opportunity to speak to everyone. I acknowledge the fact that we are able to come here as a citizen and learn and listen as to what's going on in our city. I thank RTC for our paratransit. However, there are some serious issues that need to be addressed at this time, most of which deal with scheduling. As a passenger, I have been inconvenienced no less than 3 times over the last 3 weeks, waiting more than 30 minutes beyond that time that's given. That is unacceptable. A lot of these owners of businesses and whatnot do not want us sitting around waiting for a bus. They feel as though that's a negative impact on their business. I ask that the scheduling department, whoever it is, please work out these schedules. Like, wasn't even able to attend last month because my 8 a.m. arrival or pickup time did not show up until 9:20. That is totally, completely unacceptable. And then when we have to schedule our appointments around when we think the bus is going to pick us up, we're in bad shape. Something needs to be done with this scheduling sooner rather than later. So the gentleman who was talking about the trafficking and the traffic signals and all that kind of thing, I request that you put an additional 10 or 15 seconds on those crossing lanes. It's difficult to cross 6 lanes of traffic in 20 minutes, in 20 seconds, I'm sorry. So if you would please add at least 10 seconds so we can get halfway across for those of us who are able to move and not have a wheelchair or something like that. That would help considerably. Also, this ride share, we understand that we have to wait our turn, but when it goes beyond an hour, that is unacceptable. Something needs to change. Things need to change in order to help us. We are unable, incapable to get around other than paratransit. I know that you have this pilot program going now with Uber and Lyft. We don't know a whole lot about it. We don't know how to access it. I don't even know if we have the ability to access it. But we need to know what other alternatives there are to taking paratransit. If there are any, please let us know. It's cold out there. Sitting and waiting for 30, 40, 50 minutes, 60 minutes to be picked up to go to another appointment that you may and may not make, that's not good. So I'm asking you, please do something about this scheduling snafus that have been happening much too often lately. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'm sure staff will meet with her.
We'll meet with her. Yep.
Wonderful. Let's see. Aaliyah Dupree.
Chair Brown, thank you again. Alida Dupree here for the record to speak. First of all, I love a good public meeting. Can't seem to get enough of them. So I took the bus today as usual with the app. Very good. Rode a Deuce bus with the new blue seats in them. So I hope we can continue to add those new seats. I don't know if the surface has little dots on them. Those are easier for me to sit in. I did get to ride a new vehicle, 17604. So I hope we will get more of these new ones on the road. This is part of the Keolis 40-foot series. So there were plenty of sideways facing seats. So this is a good vehicle for me to ride. So I hope we will continue to get these new vehicles on the road. More inspiring stories from the world of fare payment and collection. The Las Vegas monorail has a mobile ticketing system. I've not used it yet, but I intend to try it, even though I still have a paper mag stripe ticket from the $1 Nevada resident program. So these are things that we can learn from each other. In reading about apps, Massachusetts Bay Railroad has 50% penetration with the mobile app. And how can we get there? Because it seems like more than half the people I run into have mobile phones. I'm doing this. So as I follow San Francisco, which I ride Muni frequently while I'm there, they have interesting proposals in their budget plan that will be eventually submitted to the San Francisco Board of Supervisors, which has incentives for customers to prepay their fare and to use electronic ticketing. I think we should work toward this to move the needle and have stronger incentives for people to use these electronic programs, especially on the showcase route, which is the Strip. We must remove impediments that are there for people to use these mobile ticket programs. MBTA has initiated Apple Pay for their app, so too I think we should do that ourselves, so people will not have as much sign up that they have to do, especially if they don't come here very often, which I hope they will come here very often, as this is my home and I want people to come to my home, which I love very much. So let us continue this work. Lastly, I hope we can get single ride tickets on this mobile app, which will help a number of people. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Our next speaker.
Good morning. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Raymond Fletcher for the record. As you go about your RFP for paratransit, just remember not all persons with a disability belong to any kinds of groups. So you want to make sure that you're reaching out to the people that frequently ride and whatnot. I've done this before in the past with my transit company when I sat on my board of directors, so I would like to offer my services to the RTC as they look at expanding the paratransit services and working with people from our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Raymond. Is there anyone else wishing to speak to the board? I did want to bring to the board attention one of our RTC team members has received some national recognition, and this recognition has gone viral over the social media channels, and that is David Swallow's birthday today. Thank you all. This meeting is adjourned. Or we'll close public comment. This meeting is adjourned.